Debate continues here in the United States between Democrats and Republicans over the debt ceiling increase. Joining us right now, Republican Congressman Tom Price, who's the chairman of the House Republican Policy Committee, also a member of the Budget and Ways and Means Committees. Also weighing in this morning, our guest host, Don Peebles. And Congressman Price, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Wonderful to be with you. Thank you.
We've been going back and forth about the debt ceiling, trying to get our arms around it and figure out where the situation stands.
Sure.
This morning, Morning Money from Politico has some new words that are coming out from the Treasury, some new talk about why they think this is so imperative and has to get done. They say, first of all, the U.S. has made these promises already based on budgets that Congress has passed, so we need to pay these things. Second of all, the argument that we can pick and choose which of our bills to pay and our creditors won't notice that we're not paying some of those bills. They think that's a specious argument.
Yeah.
What do you say back to that?
Well, I think the Treasury actually did themselves no favors in moving from the May 16th date to the August 2nd date. What Geithner did in that instance was just give those folks who believe that these numbers really aren't firm greater credibility. Look, at some point we will pierce the debt ceiling, whether it is August 2nd, whether it's August 9th, whether it's August 15th, who knows. But the fact of the matter is we can't continue business as usual. We can't continue spending money that we don't have without structural changes put in place to get us on that path to balance. And that's all that we're saying. We would hope, we would challenge the president to recognize the remarkable difficulties that we have and say, yes, we've got to change course. We can't continue business as usual.
Although the problem becomes the two parties have very different ideas about how to change course. There are some who say you need to raise revenue. That's the only way to do it, particularly when revenue's been running at 15% of GDP versus the 18% normal. There are others who say, wait a second, we've got to bring our spending back down. Obviously, that's where the Republicans have staked their claim. We've gotten out of context and out of whack with historical norms on spending levels, too. So how do you find a compromise between those 2 points?
Well, I think you listen to the American people. The American people understand and appreciate that we're not in this boat because we don't tax enough. They know that we tax enough, and many believe we tax too much. We're in this boat because we spend too much, and we've got to get our fiscal house back in order. We believe, and we put forward a very coherent, optimistic plan about how you get a budget in balance, how you begin to decrease this spending, how you get to a point where you have a balanced budget and you can begin paying off your debt through fundamental reform of entitlements, through making certain that you decrease spending right now and you have a cap, you make it so that we aren't spending beyond the historical norms of 18.5% to 20% of GDP.
Well, Congressman, can you tell us then, because I agree with you, I think we've got to get spending under control, but I'm not sure the American people don't, there's a large chunk of the American people that think the affluent people, like companies like mine, aren't paying enough in taxes. So that's not as clear of a debate, but I think what is clear is that we can't afford to keep spending what we don't have. So in terms of fundamental restructuring of entitlements, what would be the first 3 steps that the Republican Party, if it had its way, which it does in the House, what would it do?
In fact, we've put forward that plan. And what we haven't seen from the other side is a coherent plan that can actually be looked at and criticized in very specific ways. And we put forward that plan through the Republican budget. We passed it in the House of Representatives. And what it says is that you've got to reform Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, the entitlement programs that drive the largest portion of our budget. In terms of Medicare, what we say is that those 55 and above will see no changes to the current proposal. And those under the age of 55 will see significant opportunities and options to be able to choose the kind of health care that they want for themselves. And the reason that that's important is that the current Medicare program, we had the Medicare trustees before our Ways and Means Committee last week, and they've said that the Medicare program is going broke. So Medicare, as we know it, has already been modified, has already been changed, has already been significantly decreased through the current proposals of and programs of the President of the United States. So it's not that it's Medicare as we know it forever and ever. It's that they have already changed the program. And then Medicaid, we propose that the Medicaid program be block granted to the states. It's in essence the way that the welfare program was saved in the 1990s. It's one that gives certainty at the federal level to the budget and allows for states to have greater flexibility in how they cover their uninsured population. So what we have put forward are very specific proposals that allow individuals to attack, yes, to demagogue, yes, but what we hope that would do, and maybe we were were a little too hopeful and optimistic, was to begin a conversation about how do we address these challenges that we face instead of just swiping at each other and spitting at each other.
You know, I will say the Republicans have put out very detailed plans on how to get to these areas. Is there room for compromise, though? I mean, some of the things that we'd heard this week even would be that the number would be closer to $3 trillion. Maybe there would not be tax increases that went along with that, but maybe some of the bigger cuts would be things that could be structurally put into place to kick in after 2012.
I think there is, but you can't compromise with a speech.
Right.
You got to have a plan on the other side. And what we put forward is that plan. We had hoped that a counter proposal of a real specific plan would come back. So then you can have the discussion about what do you do with Medicare? How do you save Medicare? We save Medicare. The president's proposal and the president's plan last year, we believe, destroys Medicare as we know it. We save Medicaid. The president's proposal makes it so that you actually increase the burden on the states, and everybody knows that you can't continue and sustain that kind of challenge, and you can't continue spending more money than you take in.
I overheard a conversation yesterday. I was sitting in a restaurant, and I overheard a woman who was probably in her 60s saying, those Republicans are destroying everything. They want to change the way we do business. Well, what do you say back to a constituent who says something like that? You guys are making broad-based changes. How do you answer those
I think what we're doing is getting back to fundamental American principles, and that is individual responsibility, making certain that the system works in a way that allows those wonderful entrepreneurs across this great nation to thrive. Job creation. We haven't seen significant job creation at all out of the kind of proposals that have been put forward by the president. In fact, we've seen significant decreases in jobs, and that we can't continue down this path.
Cutting
right
government
now.
spending will result in more jobs.
Absolutely. Every job, every dollar that the government takes out of the private sector is a dollar that the private sector doesn't have to create jobs, to expand their business. So and the uncertainty in the market that Mr. Peebles talked about just a moment ago is phenomenal. When I talk to entrepreneurs and when I talk to business folks, small and large businesses across this nation, what they say is would you expect me to invest in this kind of market when we don't know what the taxes are going to be? We don't know what the rules and regulations are coming from EPA or the Health Department or NLRB or on and on and on.
The Greek people who are protesting today should be assured that when austerity comes to their country, the jobless rate will go down.
Certainly over a period of time, if they do the right things, it will go down of necessity. But
aggregate demand does not shrink?
Look, the challenges that Greece has right now is where we don't want to get to. We at this time, which is what we believe with our proposal, we have an opportunity in this country, a wonderful opportunity, to turn this around before we get to the remarkable challenges from a financial standpoint that we're seeing in other countries across Europe.
Do you hold out hope that there will be some decision that's meant? I mean, do you hold out hope that there's going to be something that really looks to significant cuts in the budget that gets passed?
I sure hope so. That's what we have to do. You can't. We've had 1.4, and $1.6 trillion deficits in each of the last 3 years. Right. You can't continue.
But come on, with all due respect, George Bush was president for 8 years. President Obama walked into a disaster when he came into office. Now, I don't agree with every one of his policies, but he walked into a complete disaster. The nation was near a depression.
There's a reason for spending like that, but there has to be a time when it ends.
Sure, of course. And also Medicaid, Medicare was broken before he walked in the door.
Sure.
George Bush presided over 8 years of a failed system. And Medicare, Medicaid, especially Medicare, is fundamentally unsound because Americans are living a lot longer.
You really don't want to argue that we're in this situation because of President Bush, do you? Look,
come on now.
This country for a long time has done a lot of the wrong things in terms of spending. There is no doubt about it. Sure. But they have increased exponentially over the last 3 years. We had $5 trillion in deficit spending over the last 3 years. That's not the kind of deficit spending that occurred before. You can't.
Medicare is being rated for the health care plan, too. I mean, that's the other part. You're right that these are problems that have built up over decades.
Yes.
And absolutely.
And Obama has been the first president, frankly, that's had the courage to step up and be willing to try an alternative solution to the failed health care system.
George Bush tried to take on Social Security.
Yeah, he did.
And ran into
all I know is it's a little unnerving to have this conversation while watching the rubber bullets out of Athens live. I mean, that's instructive. We don't want to go there.
You're absolutely right. And that's why we believe there's a positive way to solve these challenges that we face so we can get job creation.
Congressman Tom Price, thank you very much. Good to see you again.